Alright guys, welcome back to another video. I'm the Yankee Nerd, and today we're going to be talking about salary cap in the MLB. Now, a lot of people are wondering what's up with the MLB. A lot of people are saying that there's going to be a lockout for the year 2027. And I'm going to tell you what the salary cap is, and why the MLB shouldn't have it, and why there might be a lockout over it. Alright, so, first thing, what is the salary cap? Well, salary cap in the other major sports are a little bit tricky. They're kind of all over the place. But in NFL, they use a salary cap where it's a hard cap. So pretty much no teams can go over that cap. So it's a set amount of money, and that money is determined by how much revenue each team makes. So the revenue that team makes gets split up between the owners and the players, and they get to dedicate the player money for what the GM does in acquiring players, signing players, trading for players, drafting players, everything. And then in the NBA, they have what's called a soft cap. So the cap is like theoretically unlimited. Like you can spend $1 billion on your team, but once you go after a certain amount of money, there is taxes and penalties put onto your team. So your money will be taxed. Penalties will be given to teams that, like drafting players and stuff like that, and everything under the whole umbrella of just like your team will kind of be hurt but better in the long run. And baseball has something where if you exceed $300 million, it's kind of like the NBA, where the team get taxed and you get penalized for having exceeding the budget for that set amount of time, for like 3 years. So same thing for the MLB. So why is this such a big deal? Well, in football and all the other sports, it's a little bit tricky as to what the team considers revenue, because revenue can mean a lot of different things, and they are constantly arguing as to what is constituted as revenue, what isn't revenue. And because if you paid attention before, this will be on the test, revenue is divided between the owners and the players. So the owners want to keep as much money and give as little to the players. Now, what does that have to do with baseball? Baseball, technically, it's unlimited, right? That's why you see, because in a bunch of other sports, there's a little bit of like forced rules, like you can't have players signed to a contract for a certain amount of time, you can't exceed a certain amount of money, or you can't go below a certain amount of money, and you have to be like vigilant in free agency, and players normally enter free agency a couple of times. Rather than baseball, you mainly have like one time to enter free agency, maybe two, and that's it. So while players in the NFL and NBA, they can enter free agency a bunch of times and go to a bunch of teams if they're not traded. So in the MLB, there is the owners want to keep as much money. So when you hear people saying, "Oh, the Dodgers, they're ruining baseball," they're not ruining baseball. Trust me. Okay. Well, the teams that are ruining baseball are the teams that are spending the least amount of money, because a lot of teams, they have the money, they just don't want to spend it. So what do? They just don't spend it. There's no penalty. There is a penalty, actually, after a certain amount of time. That's why you see sometimes like the A's this year and a bunch of other teams, they'll sometimes go on big spending sprees. I'm like, oh wow, this team is like trying in free agency. What's happening? No, they just don't want to get penalized, because what happens is that all the MLB teams pool their money together, and the money goes back to those teams, the smaller market teams. So a smaller team would actually be getting money from the bigger teams, because the bigger teams are almost in like paying for the smaller teams. Even though the smaller teams make money in their own right, they're paying for them because they don't make as much money as the bigger teams, and they want to compete. So what happens is, a lot of the times these owners, they just don't want to pay. So but why is this such a heated debate around the MLB world, and mainly in this upcoming CBA agreement? Well, the Players Association, the people who advocate for no salary cap, and the owners, the league, are having a bit of a scuffle because they think a cap would be better. And they're trying to implement this idea in your mind that a cap would be better for you since your smaller market team can now finally compete, which is in theory correct. But in practice, it'll be in the long term, it'll be very harmful towards the players because the players, they can practically make whatever they want. It's uncapped. So the players, they want to keep the system that they have now. And I do think this system will stay. Last time this happened was in, I think, 94 or 95. Same topic was brought up. Same thing happened, but you lost baseball for a year. And that killed baseball up until the PD era. But you want to keep baseball. That's the main thing. So I think the players would try to keep the current system. And I think the owners, they're already used to it, so hopefully they could kind of just let this one go. But the salary cap, the main thing that is the problem is that it'll limit teams, and it'll in turn limit player contracts, in turn limit money that players make. And a lot of the times people would look towards the other leagues, but what they don't know is that all those other leagues are constantly fighting over what is revenue, what isn't revenue. And a lot of, especially the NFL, it's very owner-centric. So the players oftentimes don't get a say in a lot of things, and the owners pretty much rule that league, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Now, this isn't directly in turn with the salary cap, but just to show how much the owners are trying to get this in place. During the 2020 COVID shortened season, there was a mole found in the Players Association. He was a lawyer for the Players Association, so he was kind of like a middleman. Players would go up to him, tell them, hey, we want you to say this to the league. He goes to the league, say what the players said to him. Like, the league's like, okay, I want you to say this to the players. He goes back to the players and says what the league just said to him. Okay? So what happened was he was crossing between lines, and he was working for the league, a guy named Jim Murray. Now, this is very bad because he was pretty much just giving the league all the leverage since they knew what the players were thinking. So, it kind of sucked. It is what it is, but just to show you how much the league will try to get the salary cap in, because, if he's a rat, then who else is a rat? It sucks, but it is what it is, And I like how the current MLB system is. A lot of people say, this is the best system. A lot of the players in a bunch of other leagues say that this is the best players association, it's the best union. So let's keep it that way, because we don't want to be losing America's pastime. So, in the end, hopefully no salary cap gets added. We'll see at the end of this season. Next CBA is 2027. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll see you guys next one. Peace.